have to rise up. The Constitution says we the people. It doesn't say we the political parties or we the political candidates.
It's your right as an American citizen to vote.
The beauty of what we have here in America is we have a great checks and balance system.
It's the land of opportunity, it's the land of democracy. Everybody's treated equally.
This is the United States of America.
Things that get my ears to stand up are definitely the economy.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
I believe so.
And the one issue is let's get respect back, because I think that benefits everyone.
Equal pay is extremely important.
Education and making it accessible.
The common enemy that we have right now is the coronavirus.
This is Donald Trump. I was like, this is my man.
Why I'm not voting for President Trump this year.
I believe that both candidates could do more.
We're all Americans. We're all in America.
Don't be lazy. Don't be selfish. Don't be entitled.
It's your duty to vote.
Good evening, I'm Norah O'Donnell. Tonight, America is on edge. In just 4 days, one of the most divisive presidential campaigns in this nation's history will come to an end. President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden have called this election the most important in modern history. And voters have told CBS News they feel much is at stake, including their way of life. Before all the votes are counted, one result already seems certain. More Americans may vote in 2020 than ever before. In fact, the numbers, they're staggering. Experts predict maybe 150 million or more. Tens of millions have already voted as people around the nation are dropping off their ballots, some standing in line for hours to make their voices heard. President Donald Trump's 4 years in office have been unlike anything seen before, energizing many Americans and repelling others. But there's another story to this election, a story of an America not just deciding, but changing. 2020 could well bring the most diverse electorate in history. Younger people, millennials in their 20s and 30s, emerging as the largest adult generation in the country. More than a quarter of voters will be people of color, Black, Hispanic, and Asian. And the LGBTQ community is expected to show up in force. Across the country, there are differences, from small towns to big cities, from those who've been to college and those who haven't. Well, tonight, we'll take you out into that America. We'll hear from people in their own voices. They'll tell you how they've come to their decisions about their vote and about the direction they want for the nation. We begin with Gayle King and a key group of voters.
Want to talk about the power of women? Think about this. In every presidential election since 1984, women have outvoted men, in particular white women, who helped propel Donald Trump to victory in 2016.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
But in this election,
Here's how my plan works.
Let's go, Joe!
pollsters say Joe Biden is gaining ground.
Vice President!
Marie Garofalo lives in Norwalk, Connecticut. She has a nursing degree, is married to a doctor, and has raised 4 children. In the last election, she voted for Donald Trump.
Said certain things that I really picked up on that I thought were hopeful. I thought bringing jobs back to this country, that was a really encouraging thing. Make America great again.
My only special interest is you.
So now we sit here 2020, what are you thinking?
That I'm ashamed that I voted for Donald Trump? Absolutely. I'm horrified with myself.
Why?
I think that it was a combination of things that were steadily happening, especially with the climate. and with women's rights.
The suffragettes put on their biggest referendum campaign in New York.
It's been 100 years since women won the right to vote. Though current polls suggest that President Trump may have shed some support among white women, many, especially those without college degrees, have not wavered a bit. If you're voting for him for the second time, does that mean you're pleased with how President Trump is doing?
You know, facts-wise, I am, yes. Our unemployment prior to COVID was down to 4%.
52-year-old LaDonna Ferris, the single mother, has owned the hotspot tanning resort in Abilene, Texas for 22 years. For people who are not supporting President Trump, on the flip side, they say, okay, the economy's better, but people point to character, to some of the tweets that he releases. What do you say about that?
I did not vote for him based on those things. I voted for him based on the facts that he is a businessman.
Turned out I'm much wealthier than people thought. I built a great company.
What did you think when the other day he said,
"Suburban women, will you please like me?" Remember? Please. Please. I saved your damn neighborhood, okay?
I thought, how dare you? How dare you think that you saved my neighborhood? From what? From what? From black and brown people? From Asian people? From what?
what's your opinion of how the president is handling the coronavirus pandemic? He gives himself an A+ on that.
I give him an F. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. He's failed us all.
I think he's handled it as well as he possibly can.
Do you think that coronavirus is as big a problem as we're being told that it is by the authorities?
No, I feel that it is portrayed more deadly than it is. I don't feel that we should be shutting down businesses, affecting people's livelihoods, affecting the economy over it.
Ferris proved her point when she defied Texas Governor Greg Abbott's executive order closing non-essential businesses like tanning salons.
All right, you ready to go, girls?
Was it a hard decision for you to make after you're being ordered to close and you go, nope, I'm staying open?
No.
As divided as the nation is, there are still a few struggling to make a decision. You are one of these people I keep hearing about, an undecided voter. That makes you a unicorn. I like unicorns.
I am leaning one way, but it is one of those situations where this election is so polarizing that I'm telling nobody what I'm thinking.
44-year-old Becky Lightman is a financial advisor and a married mother of one. She lives in the battleground state of Florida. Donald Trump has been speaking to you and your colleagues, if you will, directly. And he said this, suburban women, why don't you like me? When he says that, what does that mean to you?
There's no white women voting bloc. I look around this neighborhood and I see Trump signs. I see Biden signs. And I think the election's gonna reflect that. I think we're gonna have a very tight election. One of the worst things for our country is going to be if there is not a clear victor, it is absolutely going to be a mess.
I'm Mark Strassman in Atlanta, where early voting has set records. 4 years ago, Donald Trump won the White House in large part by winning the votes of white men. They're a critical group again this year. About 1/3 the electorate.
Get out and vote. Thank you.
To win Georgia again this year, the Trump campaign will need a big turnout from white males like Keith Falk.
I do collision repair, and there's nobody that's really spending any money to get their cars fixed right now.
Falk's family of 4 lives in North Georgia. This registered Republican voted Trump in 2016. But now his family's hurting. Back in March, as the pandemic got worse, Athens Chevrolet laid him off. This collision tech hasn't worked since.
I never imagined in a million years that it would turn out to be something like this.
With no end in sight?
Yeah, with no end in sight, no.
What's the biggest stress?
The biggest stress is it's money. How are we gonna pay this bill? How are we gonna put food on the table? Is the economy going to roll back around? You know, are we gonna get out of this mess?
No surprise, the economy is his top issue. He's a voter who feels vulnerable. A possible Biden guy in 2020?
I'm voting for Trump because I believe in his policies and I believe what he wants to do.
You want people to work again.
Yep.
What gives you confidence that President Trump would do a better job of that than Vice President Biden?
Just for the simple fact that he wants to reopen businesses. I think Joe Biden just says stuff to please whoever he's around at that time. I don't really think he has a plan to get us out of anything.
Voters like Falk surged behind Trump 4 years ago. Among white males, he beat Hillary Clinton by 31 points.
So for Biden to win, he has to do well enough with white men. Does he have to win them? No, but he has to do well enough.
Robbie Mook managed Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. For both the Biden and Trump campaigns, he says the challenge state by state is playing the percentages.
In Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these states are whiter proportionally than other states. When we think about white men broadly, the question really is Donald Trump going to get enough of that vote this time?
Polling shows more white men backing Biden than supported Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, especially if they have a college degree. Some voted for Trump 4 years ago and now have buyer's remorse. They say to make America great again, dump Trump.
I said I would do a write-in for a tuna fish sandwich before I would vote for Trump again. And I really dislike tuna fish.
Go get it.
Whoa.
Jack doesn't want us to use his last name.
All right. I think he operates in the best interest of Donald Trump.
He says after he went online to call out the president, the blowback was horrific.
The man has been a failure. He is a man devoid of character. He has failed the nation.
Jack's now 60. An IT consultant living in Michigan. He's also a combat vet, a retired Army major with 33 years of service. He feels betrayed by the president's budget deficits, his character,
It's always Trump's fault, isn't it incredible?
and his COVID response.
He asked if he accepted responsibility. He said, no.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
The phrase we had was, you got about 24 hours to blame your predecessor. Then everything is on you. This constant going back to blame Obama, to blame the Democrats. You're in charge.
Let's get up. Let's take back this country.
Jack expects to disagree with some Biden policies, but he says after the Trump years, America needs triage. This pro-gun, anti-abortion, lifelong Republican has never voted for any Democrat until this election. He voted early, a straight Democratic ballot.
There needs to be a repudiation of the party and all those that have been his enablers.
Is it going to be odd for you as a lifelong Republican on election night to be cheering on the Democrats?
Yes, personally, I want to see a landslide for Mr. Biden. I want to demonstrate to the nation, I want to demonstrate to the world, I want to demonstrate to the allies that Donald Trump is not what America is about.
If Joe Biden wins, of course, he'll be our president. And I will pray for him every night that he does the best job he can and that he has support.
Up next, hitting the road to turn out the black vote.
There's no reason to vote for Biden because you hate Trump.
Reggie Carr is fired up.
He's your president. It ain't my president. No, he don't. No, he's everybody's president. He's the president of America, right?
He's just registered as a Republican, and he will cast the first vote of his life for President Trump.
What was it that captivated you by what he was saying?
He said that America needs to bring the jobs back here, and he said we need to export, and he said we need to protect intellectual property.
Carr says his intellectual property was stolen by China. He's in the music business with partner Johnny Thomas. They started their own clothing line, which they proudly sport at Trump rallies.
President Trump, all the way from Colorado. That's for you. Yes.
For me, to be a Trumpster means someone that is a free thinker, someone that cares about their country.
The Trump campaign hopes to attract more African American voters. In 2016, only 8% of black voters supported him. On his own dime, Carr travels on a passenger bus wrapped with the president's image, trying to bring minority voters on board.
Why would, as a black person, you would vote for Trump when he is so racist?
Okay, he's not racist.
Oh, come on.
In Denver, we saw that wasn't easy.
I bet you if you just sit down and do a little bit more research, let us go.
I do, honey.
Do
And
you live
everything
around
he
here?
says is a lie.
It's been very challenging. We talk to other minorities and we try to explain to them what the things that President Trump has done.
Rightly or wrongly, there are many who still feel that President Trump hasn't resolutely condemned those who don't want to see African Americans do well. Any merit to that in your mind?
President Trump has disemboweled the whole racist thing. He doesn't support, Antifa and, white supremacists.
What the hell do you have to lose?
4 years after Donald Trump asked black Americans that question, Latasha Brown has an answer.
Y'all think that black voters matter?
She says they have a lot to lose.
The people have to rise up.
That's why she and a team of volunteers are going all out on a privately funded 12-state bus tour to turn out black voters for Joe Biden.
It's your right to vote.
The reason why we wanted to do the tour is we wanted to connect to voters, particularly in many places that have been marginalized or where we've been seeing heightened voter suppression efforts.
African American voters are concerned most of all about the coronavirus and health care. But fewer than half are confident their vote will be counted correctly. And turnout is key. The number of blacks voting for president dropped in 2016 for the first time in 20 years.
You passionately articulated what the concerns are of blacks now. Are you expecting that to translate into sizable turnout in this election?
But I am sensing that people are frustrated and tired. And because of that, folks are motivated by different things in this election cycle. And so I do think you're going to have record number turnout.
Harris and Biden have the support of a majority of young black voters. Getting them to cast their ballot is another matter.
I'm excited to vote. I'll be voting by mail.
Winter Brianne, a youth activist at Howard University, refuses to sit on the sidelines.
Neither candidate necessarily completely holds my political ideology. Now, there's one candidate, Joe Biden, who is closest to that, and that's who I'll be casting my vote for this election.
What things are you hoping to change in this election?
There's a plethora of issues on the table, whether it be climate change, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether that be like education and making it accessible.
Brianne founded a program called Power of Future Voters. Its goal is to inspire elementary school students to get involved with their communities. Her message now is, cast your vote.
I understand the issues or the resistance to participating in a system that has failed to listen to you or care about you. But at the same time, we are trying to build a world that we want to see, and how can we use every single tool in our toolbox to make that happen?
For Brianne, that includes protesting. In 2018, she organized the largest anti-gun school walkout after the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida. And she helped organize Black Lives Matter protests after the killing of George Floyd. Brianne, who's from California, says the entire country is at a pivotal moment for race relations.
Given as entrenched as this issue of race has been in this country, are there any signs of hope that you see that this can be dealt with?
I have hope, and I think to be who I am and to be someone who cares so much, so tremendously about my world, about the people, and to be an activist means to have perpetual hope.
Even as turnout shatters records in 2020, Americans face new challenges to have their votes count. The FBI and intelligence officials have uncovered international plots to disrupt this election. Emails from Iran meant to scare people out of voting, and Russian hackers targeting voting systems. Facebook has taken emergency measures to limit inflammatory content and false reporting. Many wonder if the postal system can handle the crush of mail-in ballots in the midst of the pandemic. There are reports that elections offices have been flooded with calls from anxious voters after the president attacked mail-in voting. Coming up on The Deciders, the voice of Latinos, growing louder by the day.
Enrique Santos streaming live.
Enrique Santos is a popular Miami radio host. What sense do you get from your listeners on this election?
It's, I would say it's the most divided it's ever been.
Favorito.
In Miami, Latinos make up 70% of the population, and the Latino vote in the hotly contested state of Florida could play a huge role in choosing who goes to the White House.
Opinions are very, very split, especially within the exiled Cuban and Venezuelan community that are for Trump and believe that Biden represents socialism and everything that they left Venezuela and Cuba for, and are afraid of that happening here.
You can sound off on my IG, my Insta poll.
I have some people who are calling me communist for having my own opinions. You know, I'm very careful not to preach to my audience. I like to inform my audience, give them the tools to empower them.
But fears of socialism are real for 24-year-old Gabriela Quintana. Do you think Joe Biden is a socialist?
Okay, I believe he inclines a lot to the left.
She immigrated to the U.S. from Venezuela 10 years ago.
I believe he coquetea, how do you say, he flirts with the socialist ideologies.
She's voting for the first time as an American, but in her heart, she's voting for Venezuela.
The United States is one of the greatest countries in the world. And once, many years ago, Venezuela was a great country too. We lost it completely. And it's ruined because of socialist ideas. So I defend the person who defends democracy.
How important is the Latino vote in 2020?
You know, we have been saying that the Latino vote is important in every election.
As CEO of the Naleo Education Fund, Arturo Vargas has dedicated his career to understanding Latino politics and voting.
But the fact is that in every election, it just becomes more and more important because the size of the electorate is growing exponentially.
The U.S. Latino population eligible to vote has grown almost 40% in the last 20 years, giving it increased political clout.
And when you talk to Latinos, they want to hear more than just about immigration. They want to hear about the economy. They want to hear about jobs, public health. You have to meet Latinos where they are.
Hello. Activists have been going door to door to encourage Latinos to go to the polls. A record 32 million Latinos are eligible to vote.
I'm here to talk about the upcoming elections.
And registration efforts have added millions to voter rolls, though more than 10 million remain unregistered.
All right, thank you guys.
With effort, there are millions of Latino votes that could be had by either party. You grew up in a conservative family, all Republicans, but now you have switched your party affiliation. Why?
Yes, very Republican. I switched because it was because of Donald Trump.
Sarah Bybee Fisk grew up in California, the daughter of a Mexican mother and a white American father. She now lives with her family in Gilbert, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. What was it about President Trump that made you leave the Republican Party?
In particular, the way he talks about people.
Her blunt assessment of the president is the kind of sentiment that could nudge Arizona from red to blue.
You can't say that Mexico is sending their worst people. Rapists and murderers. Any person who can say that with a straight face does not know the people who come here to work. They are mothers who have strapped babies to their backs and walked across deserts, swum across rivers. And when you are Mexican, and you hear your people being talked about that way, it's a no. It is a no. And I think that Latinos in Arizona are understanding that good things can't come from a bad man.
Not everyone agrees. Sarah has gotten pushback, especially from the members of her church. She's a Mormon, a traditionally conservative group.
Some people have said I should repent, right? That they've indicated that this is somehow a flaw in my character. There are just some people who think that it's Republican or nothing.
Hubieron muchas sorpresas.
But that's the beautiful thing about democracy, the beautiful thing about our country, that we can agree to disagree, that you can vote your conscience and not, they always tell us this is the most important election of our lifetime, right? I think this one really is.
Still to come on The Deciders, the power of Asian Americans on the rise. Welcome back to The Deciders. Young Americans and members of the LGBTQ community have become a force to be reckoned with. And coming up, they'll tell us how they'll vote. But first, if the 2020 election is close, Asian Americans, making up 5% of the electorate, could have an important voice in who wins this time around. Elaine Gajano checks out the power of their voices.
In the final rush to reach voters, there's a battle for Nevada.
Hello, Las Vegas.
And a key group here, more than 200,000 eligible voters who trace their roots to Asia or the Pacific Islands.
You see a lot of injustices. You see a lot of inequality.
Grace Vergara Mactao grew up in the Philippines, where 1 in 5 live in poverty. Inequality that sparked her activism. Today, she's mobilizing Filipino Americans in Nevada for Joe Biden. She hosts a weekly phone bank with her union, whose members, like healthcare workers nationwide, are on the front lines of the pandemic.
The lack of attention to protect the workers so they can serve our community was disturbing. And yes, our members are getting sick.
She says she also sees a link from the White House.
China virus, the China plague, Kung flu,
to the harassment faced by some Asian Americans.
I am afraid for my son. I feel like people are given a permission to be racist towards somebody because of the color of their skin, because the shape of their eyes. Donald Trump has contributed to that in a great deal.
90% of it is white noise. So things that get my ears to stand up are definitely the economy.
2,500 miles away in East Brunswick, New Jersey, Dar Kona voted Libertarian in 2016. But now he says business is booming.
I actually made the decision in June to quit my job, working for a construction company, and start my own.
In the middle of a pandemic?
In the middle of a pandemic. And it was the right time, and it was a great time to do it, because I had a tremendous amount of faith in the economy.
Kona is Indian American and one of 11 million Asian American eligible voters. A majority say they plan to vote for Biden.
Support of your community, the AAPI community, has been incredible.
I am voting for President Trump. I think he's the best candidate.
I'm not voting for President Trump this year. I just don't think he has the character that represents the Asian values that I had growing up, like respect and concern for families. Just his policy on immigration would make it even harder for like our parents and grandparents to have come over.
Rich and Lena Eng's families immigrated from China and Taiwan. They live in New Berlin, Wisconsin. They're evangelical Christians and lifelong Republicans.
There are positives that President Trump has done. For example, reaching out to President Tsai when she won the election in Taiwan. I mean, that was tremendous. Challenging the Chinese Communist Party on just the way that they've taken advantage of the intellectual property. But I don't think that his tactics were right.
It's absolutely wrong.
For Darcona, it's a matter of trust. Joe Biden's evasiveness on expanding the Supreme Court gives Kona pause.
He shouldn't have had an issue answering that question. It's a fundamental answer of three branches of government. I come from a country, the politicians and the government have tremendous amount of control. The beauty of what we have here in America is we have a great checks and balance system.
So let me just ask you one more question about Joe Biden. You know, he chose as his running mate Senator Kamala Harris. She is the first Black and the first Indian American woman to be nominated for vice president. Did that enter into your decision-making process at all about who you would support?
No. Race actually has no play for me in politics whatsoever. It's nice to see minorities being elevated. I think we need to see more of that. But I think what we need to see more of is merit-based. Who is the viable candidate?
For the Engs, faith informs their politics.
You started a class to talk about faith and politics with other members of your church. Why did you do that?
Because we were concerned about just the vitriol and the contempt that people had for each other, even within the Christian community. We're supposed to be a community that is defined by, above all else, love.
Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial group in the U.S. electorate. Their backgrounds and ideology may vary, but across the country, they're making their voices heard.
I hope that the Asians will get out and vote because we can make a difference in our vote.
People are dying. And I think it is our opportunity now to make a change. And it is our opportunity to turn around our country.
Coming up, LGBTQ voters take to the streets and the polls.
Only about 17% of the LGBTQ community is expected to vote for President Trump, which is why this Beverly Hills, California march is turning heads.
USA! USA! Trump is actually one of the most pro-LGBT presidents we've ever had.
It's a message straight from the president's mouth.
I am far better for women. I am far better for gays.
Is this it? George Santos is campaigning for Congress in Long Island, New York. He's gay, Republican, and supporting the president.
I think that this president has done more for the community than his predecessors.
So I just want to read to you some of President Trump's policies. In 2017, Mr. Trump tried to roll back medical protection for the trans community. Also in 2017, endorsed the idea that employers had the right to discriminate against the LGBT community based on their religious and moral reasons.
There are certain instances, like a few of the ones that you mentioned, that we may have disagreements. I'm a strong believer of if you agree with somebody 70% and you support them.
This is ready. Look at this one. Aww.
In Santos's Long Island district, voter Sarah Kate Ellis and her wife Kristen are parents to 11-year-old kids, Thomas and Kate.
The record on Trump has been an abomination for the LGBTQ community.
Ellis is the president of GLAAD, a gay advocacy group that's been tracking LGBTQ rights under the president and Joe Biden.
Whether that's kicking trans people out of the military or it's rhetoric saying that he thinks it's fine for businesses to discriminate against LGBTQ people. It should be within their right, is what he said.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has not always supported gay marriage rights.
Do you support gay marriage?
No.
That was 2008. Biden has long since reversed his position, and many in the gay community believe he is a bigger supporter than President Trump.
Are you saying that marriage equality under the Trump administration is at risk here of being overturned?
Marriage equality under the Trump administration is absolutely at risk.
And that means more work for you.
Yes, a lot of work.
ICE's King knows firsthand how much work is ahead.
For you to finally be able to come out as your true self.
Yes.
After struggling so long to be able to do so, what was that like?
It meant freedom.
Oh, that's cool.
King, once homeless, is now an actress living in Hollywood.
I was physically born male, and now I live my life as a glamorous female.
She recently starred as the transgender sister in the Netflix series about the Central Park Five called When They See Us.
Do you feel seen in Washington?
No. I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman. I'm a trans Black woman. Do I feel seen? Absolutely not.
With Trump, King fears no job protection and violence against her community.
I don't understand why we are that big of a threat. Is it because we have enough courage to be who we always felt like we wanted to be?
For Santos, courage means being honest about his choice too.
I think it's simple to see that people are starting to wake up and see this president isn't so bad.
Rights are on the line no matter who wins.
We are fighters. We have to. Our mere existence is a fight, and we will continue fighting. There's another one.
And the next battle is coming. The day after the election, the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments on whether religiously affiliated foster care agencies can reject same-sex couples.
Still to come, our future, the next generation, and the power of youth. Four years ago, seniors helped put Donald Trump in the White House. This year, they could help take him out. He won the senior vote by 10 points in 2016. He now trails in most polls. In Arizona, the seniors are having a teenage moment.
The Republicans here in Sun City are definitely enthusiastic for President Trump, for what they're doing for them economically, health-wise. There's a lot of things for the veterans.
Since 2004, the majority of seniors have voted Republican in national elections. That's expected to hold true again.
Look at where the economy was and where it is now.
73-year-old Darrell Hines prepped his golf cart for a Trump parade.
There's probably never been a president that has demonstrated and shown leadership in pro-life.
But this election, some seniors are defecting. In nearby Peoria, Arizona, retired nurse Roberta Medina is all in for Joe Biden.
Getting the facts out to people is what really counts for the tremendous swell of Democratic support.
My friend Peter, he decorated it for me this morning.
It looks great.
I like it that they know that Democrats are patriotic.
77-year-old Marcia McGovern's getting ready to ride for Biden.
President Trump has not grown into his job. He seems to be incapable.
She's critical of President Trump's handling of the coronavirus. It has taken 2 lives in her subdivision.
Seniors in this community are aware of the impact of the virus. It's not some abstract number. It's our neighbors.
2 communities side by side, yet miles apart.
This is what democracy looks like.
And this is what the youth vote sounds like. A diverse group made up of more than 48 million eligible voters who are more engaged now than ever before.
I'm from Tyler, Texas. We've got a really strong community base here.
We're going to do our due diligence.
Really happy you guys were doing this.
Well, thank you. It
Trump
makes...
all the way, Republican all the way.
I love that we've got some rolling hills and it doesn't take much to get out into nature.
I was like, I'm gonna come by. So I'm eating a flat. I feel like this is very East Texas to me.
A lot of pride here.
A lot of pride, and people aren't afraid to show their pride.
We elect Donald Trump 2020. 26-year-old Lauren Etheridge is clear on who she supports.
They talk about the silent majority. They sit there and say, you know, Trump doesn't have a chance and he's obviously not going to win. But then I go to events like this and it is very energizing.
Trump 2020!
It's awesome.
1,500 miles away in Harlem, New York.
So what I usually get here is pretty simple. Mac and cheese.
You feeling like mac and cheese today? Okay, all right.
21-year-old Ramon Contreras has a different experience.
I grew up in public housing, raised by a single mother who immigrated to this country from the Dominican Republic. And she raised me and my 3 sisters alone.
This is where you grew up?
Yeah.
In a few days, he plans to vote here at his neighborhood community center.
Yeah, I used to come here every day after school.
And you're going to be casting your first presidential vote on November 3rd.
Yeah, for Joe Biden.
Ramon and Lauren represent the diversity within young voters that could be the tipping point for this year's election.
I hope a day never comes where I do have to actually use my gun, but I do want to make sure that if that moment comes, I'm prepared for it.
For Lauren, guns mean security.
I did not grow up in a home that lent itself to a nurturing environment for a child. I do feel it's important for me as a young female to be able to protect myself.
Issues that matter to me the most, gun violence, which is the reason that I'm involved in activism and getting out the vote. I saw gun violence, from an up-close perspective, hearing gunshots before I go to bed some nights.
I want to ensure that every Black and brown student has a platform to use their voice and demand the change we need.
After his friend was shot and killed, Ramon led a march carrying a casket to symbolize the thousands of young lives lost to gun violence every year.
There's a lot of different ways in which young people especially see the future of our nation. And then I think millennials and Gen Z especially, they care about affordable health care, gun violence and racial injustice. They care about economic inequality. These are all issues that I think young people are on the forefront of.
Headcount.org, good to vote.
Kellen Edmondson works for the nonpartisan group Headcount.
It's up to us.
Let's vote. Let's change the world together.
Just do it, people.
It's organizations like this that are focused on increasing turnout, especially among the youth.
There are some who will look at this group, young people, and go, oh, they don't vote. What is your response to that?
Young people do vote, and young people bring a passion and a confidence to certain issues that I think is very unique.
I feel like we're very polarized as voters right now. I want us to come together and realize that we can have a difference of opinion and still find solutions.
How do you think President Trump has brought the country together?
While I feel he has a unique way of speaking, he has been, in my opinion, open to all demographics. I feel as though he's been able to bridge the gap.
I think Joe Biden would take a more humane and real approach to these issues. When Trump says, let's make our country great again, and he shouts all these racial slurs, that's not what makes our country great.
In 2018, young voters came out in record numbers. What happens next is up to them.
If young people decided to get involved and realize sooner that their vote does count and does make a difference, they're going to make an impact on any election.
We've protested, we've marched, we've put ourselves in danger. Now let's make sure that we vote and create that government that can really bring to life the country that we want to grow up in.
It's been said time and again that every vote counts. We only have to go back 4 years when fewer than 80,000 votes over 3 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, swung the election to Donald Trump. 80,000 out of 137 million cast throughout the country. Or go back 20 years ago when George W. Bush won Florida and thus the election by just 537 votes. Something to remember as the American people decide the next president. Election Day is just 4 days away. If you haven't already done so, please vote. Thank you for watching. For all of us at CBS News, I'm Norah O'Donnell.